The year is 1837. You are in the city of Guangzhou in southern China. It is the height of summer, sweltering and humid. You are looking at a 23-year-old man named Hong Xiuquan. He is sitting in a tiny, cramped wooden cell. He has been sitting there for 3 days and 3 nights, taking the imperial civil service exam. It is the only way out of poverty for his family, who have bankrupted themselves to pay for his education. The pressure is unimaginable. The exam ends. Hong steps out of the cell, and he finds out that he has failed. Again, for the 3rd time. The shame completely breaks his mind. He collapses. He is carried back to his village in a coma. For days he burns with a terrifying fever. He thrashes in his bed, screaming about demons, golden-bearded old men, and swords. When he finally wakes up, he is a changed man. A few years later, he will read a poorly translated religious pamphlet. He will connect the dots of his fever dream. He will come to a realization that makes absolute, terrifying sense to him. He will realize that he is the literal, biological, younger brother of Jesus Christ. And because of that single, feverish delusion, he is going to start a war. A war that will not end until 30 million people are dead. If you think the deadliest conflicts in history are fought over oil, land, or gold, you are wrong. Sometimes the deadliest weapon on earth is a shattered ego looking for an excuse. Here on AG Chronicle, we document the moments when a single spark of madness burns down the entire world. Every subscription, every like, helps us read the ashes of history. Now let's go to the Qing Dynasty, because the Son of Heaven is waking up and hell is coming with him. To understand how one man's mental breakdown destroyed a country, you have to understand the staggering pressure of the Chinese imperial exam. During the Qing Dynasty, society was rigidly locked. The only way for a peasant to become a wealthy, respected government official was to pass a brutal, multi-day exam that tested the rote memorization of ancient Confucian texts. The pass rate was less than 1%. Hong Xiuquan was a village school teacher. He belonged to a marginalized minority group called the Hakka. His entire village had pooled their meager savings to pay for his tutors. He was their golden ticket. When he went to the massive testing compound in Guangzhou, he was locked in a cell the size of a closet. He ate, slept, and wrote in that box for 3 days. When he failed for the 3rd time in 1837, it wasn't just a personal disappointment. It was the financial ruin and ultimate shame of his entire community. His brain simply could not process the failure. So his brain broke. During his nervous breakdown, Hong hallucinated. He dreamt that he was carried up to a heavenly palace. There he met a venerable old man with a golden beard, wearing a black dragon robe. The old man wept, telling Hong that the people of the world were worshipping demons. The old man handed Hong a giant sword. Then a middle-aged man, whom Hong understood to be his older brother, instructed him in how to slay the demons. Hong woke up from the coma. He didn't know what the dream meant. He went back to his quiet life as a village teacher. But 6 years later, a cousin handed him a book. The book was a pamphlet written by a Protestant missionary. It contained translated excerpts of the Christian Bible. Hong sat in his room reading the text, and suddenly the puzzle pieces of his 6-year-old fever dream snapped together in his mind with terrifying clarity. The old man with the golden beard? That was God the Father. The middle-aged older brother? That was Jesus Christ, which meant that Hong Xiuquan was the second son of God. And the demons he was ordered to slay? They were the idols in the Buddhist and Taoist temples. But more importantly, the demons were the Qing Dynasty, the ruling Manchu emperors who were heavily taxing the peasants and failing to protect China from foreign empires like the British. Hong didn't just think he was special. He believed he had a divine biological mandate to purge the world of demons. He immediately went to the local village temple and smashed the ancient statues to pieces. He was fired from his job as a teacher, but he didn't care. He had a new job. Hong and his cousin began to preach. They didn't preach traditional Christianity. They preached a bizarre, militant, highly customized version of it. Hong called his movement the God-worshipping society. In the 1840s, southern China was a powder keg. Famine was widespread. Bandits roamed the countryside. The government was corrupt and completely indifferent to the suffering of the peasants, especially the Hakka minority. When Hong arrived, preaching that all men and women were brothers and sisters in the eyes of God and promising a utopian kingdom where land would be shared equally, the desperate peasants flocked to him. He didn't just gather a congregation, he gathered an army. By 1850, Hong had over 20,000 fanatical followers. They forged their own weapons. They stopped wearing the traditional Manchu queue, the braided ponytail mandated by the Qing government, and let their hair grow long as a sign of absolute rebellion. The Qing government realized this wasn't just a cult, it was a threat. They sent the imperial army to crush them, but Hong's followers weren't afraid to die. If they died fighting demons, Hong promised they would go straight to heaven. In January 1851, the god worshippers met the imperial army in battle, and the peasants absolutely destroyed them. Hong Xiuquan stood before his victorious, blood-soaked followers. He declared the founding of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. He crowned himself the Heavenly King. The Taiping army became a juggernaut. They marched north, sweeping through the provinces. Because the Qing army was so poorly trained and corrupt, the Taiping crushed them at every turn. Their ranks swelled from 20,000 to over 1 million soldiers. In 1853, they reached the ancient, massive city of Nanjing. They blew holes in the towering city walls with gunpowder. They flooded into the city. True to their mandate to slay demons, they systematically massacred the entire Manchu population of Nanjing, men, women, and children. Up to 40,000 people were butchered in the streets. Nanjing became the new capital of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. But once Hong Xiuquan had a capital, the holy utopia quickly turned into a dystopian nightmare. Hong instituted a society of absolute puritanical extremism. Private property was abolished. Alcohol, opium, and gambling were punishable by death. But the most radical law was the total separation of the sexes. Men and women were forced to live in separate barracks. Even husbands and wives were forbidden from having sex. If you were caught sleeping with your own spouse, you were beheaded. But did these rules apply to the Heavenly King? Absolutely not. While his followers were forced into celibacy and starvation, Hong Xiuquan locked himself inside a massive forbidden palace in the center of Nanjing. He never left. He built a personal harem of hundreds of women. He wore robes of pure yellow silk. He spent his days writing terrible poetry and demanding absolute worship. The man who promised equality had become exactly what he set out to destroy. The Qing emperor in Beijing was terrified. He ordered his top generals to wipe the Taiping off the map. What followed was the Taiping Rebellion, the bloodiest civil war in human history. It was a war of total annihilation. Neither side took prisoners. If the Qing army recaptured a city, they would execute every single civilian inside, believing them to be tainted by the cult. When the Taiping took a city back, they did the same. The landscape of central China was turned into a wasteland. Rivers were literally choked with floating corpses. The devastation destroyed the agriculture of the region. Famine set in. It was so severe that in some provinces, human meat was sold in the open markets. People traded their children for bags of rice. For over a decade, this meat grinder consumed the country. Eventually, the Western powers, the British and the French, realized that if the Taiping won, it would ruin their lucrative trade deals with the Qing dynasty. The British didn't care about the theology, they cared about the tea and the silk. So European officers, most famously a British general named Charles Chinese Gordon, stepped in. They trained a modern, elite Chinese force equipped with European artillery and rifles. They called it the ever-victorious army. The tide finally turned. By 1864, the city of Nanjing was completely surrounded by the Qing imperial army. Inside the walls, the situation was apocalyptic. There was no food. The Taiping soldiers were starving. Hong's generals begged him to abandon the city and flee into the mountains to keep the rebellion alive. But Hong Xiuquan was lost in his own delusion. He refused to leave his palace. He told his generals that God would defend the city. When they told him there was nothing left to eat, Hong ordered his followers to eat heavenly manna. What was heavenly manna? It was weeds. Hong gathered the weeds growing in the courtyard of his palace. He boiled them. He ate them to prove that God would sustain them. The weeds were poisonous. Hong Xiuquan fell violently ill. He died shortly after, raving in his bed, just as he had 27 years earlier when he failed his exam. His followers secretly buried him behind the palace, desperate to hide the fact that the immortal Son of God had just died of food poisoning. A month later, the Qing army tunneled under the massive walls of Nanjing and detonated a massive mine. The wall collapsed. The imperial troops poured into the heavenly kingdom. What happened next was not a battle, it was an extermination. The Taiping rebels, despite starving and realizing their leader was dead, fought with terrifying fanaticism. When they ran out of bullets, they fought with swords. When they lost their swords, they fought with their teeth. Tens of thousands of Taiping soldiers, rather than surrender to the demons, lit their own houses on fire and walked into the flames. Over 100,000 people died inside the walls of Nanjing in just 3 days. When the Qing generals found Hong Xiuquan's grave, they dug up his rotting body. They beheaded it. They burned his remains to ash. Then, to ensure that the false prophet could never have a monument, they packed his ashes into a cannon, and they fired it into the wind. The Taiping heavenly kingdom was erased from the earth. When the dust settled, the death toll of the Taiping Rebellion was counted. It is estimated that between 20 million and 30 million people were killed. That is more than the total casualties of World War I. Entire provinces of China lost half their population, and all of it, the massacres, the famines, the cannibalism, the burning of cities, all of it can be traced back to a small wooden cell in Guangzhou and a man who couldn't handle failing a test. We often look for grand geopolitical reasons for the tragedies of history. We want the loss of millions of lives to make sense. But the terrifying truth of the Taiping Rebellion is that it doesn't make sense. It is the ultimate warning about the danger of absolute certainty. When a man believes he speaks for God, he cannot be reasoned with. He cannot be negotiated with. Because to compromise with the enemy is to compromise with the devil. Hong Xiuquan promised heaven on earth. But as history shows us time and time again, whenever men try to build heaven on earth, they always end up building hell. Thank you for watching AG Chronicle. If you believe that the most dangerous weapon in the world is a delusion disguised as destiny, hit that subscribe button. We are walking the battlefields of the past so we don't repeat them in the future.